Well, good morning, everybody. We are in the Salem, Oregon area. We're just starting just a little bit late today. Not a big problem on streaming, but happy Sunday to you. We're doing this live from here. Some shows we do are from the studio, and then of course recorded. But be sure and text and call and let other people know that we're going to have Dr. Alveda King and Ginger. Make sure I get this right, Ginger Howard on. Some of you may be off one day. It's not you that's off, it's we are that off because of travel. Kat Kerr won't be able to be with us today. We start the 10-day countdown to the election with Kat starting tomorrow at the same time. So you won't miss anything. We're going to get everything leading up to the election, and then we're going to get the day after the election recap from Kat. It's going to be very exciting. So we'll see you all for tomorrow. So Dr. Alveda King, we'll bring her on in just a minute here. She is Dr. Martin Luther King's niece. That is Dr. King's brother's daughter. And we'll bring her on and ask her just a few moments about that, and then we'll get into the content. So without further ado, let's bring out Dr. Alveda King and Ginger. There she is, and there's Ginger Howard. And so you'll recognize Dr. Alveda King. I call her Alveda. Hope no one's offended. She's my good friend. And then Ginger is a relatively new friend. She's helped co-write some stuff with Alveda. And let me just ask you, Ginger, first. So what is it that you are when you're not writing? What do you do with the committee?
Well, first of all, I'm a small business owner. That's my business, but I am the Republican National Committee woman for the state of Georgia.
Awesome. So when we were off camera, she got to tell, we had a little more time, and she was able to tell us about, she's been with the president recently. You were with Don Jr. yesterday,
yes,
is that right?
Don Jr. Friday, yes. And
that's
yesterday
awesome.
I was in South Georgia.
That's good. That's so exciting. That's so amazing. Well, Alveda, it's nice to have you on. A lot of people have seen you on Fox News. We've done several conferences together. We were friends by the time the first inauguration came along. And I think, is your sound working? Is your sound working, Alveda? Say something.
I just hadn't said anything. I'm just nodding my head. Can you hear me?
That's why. Yeah,
I'm just like, yeah.
Ventriloquism there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we were friends by the time the first inauguration happened, and so we were both at the same event at different places. Alveda King was speaking at the church at that event, and she got to talk to Trump that same day. And then later on as we were flying back, we were in the airport lounge in D.C., in one of those private lounges that you kind of have to have a membership for. And in walks Alveda King, and of course, a lot of people recognized her. And these are the type of people that will tend to either fly first class or they fly off, and so they buy a membership in this lounge. And I remember people paid me no attention at all, Alveda, until you walked in, and we sat down and began to converse, and I could see everyone leaning
just
in.
trying to lead it and hear, who is that?
Yeah. So they knew who you were, and they kind of go, "Who's this guy?" Yeah. I took a little bit of delight in that. That was fun. Is that the first time you'd ever talked to Trump? Is on that day, or had you talked with him before?
It actually wasn't, and I will get into the book and tell you how I did. But what I really wanted to say, though, we need to tell them how we became friends. One day, I've been a follower of Elijah's List almost since day one, a contributor, donating, and all of that. But none of my prophecies had ever been picked up, I don't think, and any of that. And one day, Steve Shultz, the amazing Steve Shultz and Doreen Shultz, contacted me, and Steve said, "God said, give you my spot on my next conference." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." So I went, and we released creativity into the atmosphere for books and music and ideas and businesses and just all kinds of things. And so many people raised their hands and admitted, I had a witty idea in my spirit, but I was afraid to release it. So we released it. Well, I didn't know, but God knew he was going to do it. You called me back and said, you need to come back next year. And then after that, I kept talking about Nehemiah and Ezra and Daniel and Esther, Daniel, Nehemiah, and Ezra. And you said that sounds like a book. So you actually published right around the time President Trump became president, not candidate.
Wow.
And we got a lot of
Wow.
heat about writing a book, and right on the front it says "Build the Wall." So I
Yeah.
wanted to give them a little history of how you published that book with great bravery. People still talk about it today. I've got it here behind me. So that's how Steve Shultz and Doreen Shultz and Alveda King got
That
to
is
know
right.
each other. I
That is
just
right.
thought it was important to say
And when
that.
we made contact and she started telling me the things God was telling her, I didn't know she was a prophet. And a lot of people don't know she is a seer, which means she sees things that some of us don't see. And I remember telling you, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember saying, where have you been? Because you said you'd been a reader of the Elijahs. We've been doing this for 23 years. And I said, well, what took you so long to contact us? Because we got in contact. She says, well, it's a timing issue. So I want to tell people this before we jump into this. A lot of people, Alveda is not a verbose. You're not loud, and you don't shout like Dr. Martin Luther King did, who you call Uncle Martin.
Yeah,
But
Uncle ML. Uncle ML.
Oh, you called him Uncle ML.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say something prophetically, it sounds often like it's just, hey, let's have popcorn. It's just a normal speech thing, but people don't know how much is prophetic is behind that word. So I just want to encourage you, if you hear him say something, Alveda say something that's different, listen closely, because you're probably hearing something on a deeper level than you realize. So with that, let's jump in, talk about that book or anything else about that book, and then we'll talk about Trump some stuff too. So.
Well, I think I just want to name the other books because we've got Why Trump and We're Not Colorblind. But I
Why
also
Trump?
have a book called It All Started with an Apple, and it's dealing with human sexuality, not homosexuality, human sexuality.
Okay.
And it identifies the definition of adultery, fornication, eunuchs, and all that kind of thing. So I don't want to really talk about that today. Just let people know it's available.
Okay, that's good.
It's important. So the main two books, America Return to God is now a classic. And God introduced me to the great Steve Shultz. And the book got out there, and it was a wonderful thing. So I believe it's okay if we put it in God's order, if we talk about We're Not Colorblind. And there's a chapter in We're Not Colorblind. And Ginger can explain to you how difficult it was to keep that chapter in the book and why we kept it. And it said politics aside. Because both of our editors were saying for various reasons, well, don't talk about Trump so much. Don't make it about Trump. And we really didn't. The book is not about Trump. Ginger did have a prophetic dream. And then after We're Not Colorblind was out, because I was working on Why Trump before Ginger had this prophetic dream, actually. So I thought God meant, well, don't write about Trump, do the book with Ginger. So that's what I did. And then several days ago, God said, man told you not to write Why Trump. I didn't tell you not to. So to put it in order, if we could deal with, Ginger can explain why it was so hard to deal with politics in that book and what we were up against.
And are we starting with the colorblind one?
Yeah, really with colorblind, because it actually came out before Why Trump. It's so weird.
Okay.
But they're connected. They're connected.
So whoever wants to take this first question, and then we'll turn it over to Ginger unless you answer this one yourself. People will say, what do you mean we're not colorblind? And by that I mean, if I look around, I know if I'm talking to an African American, I know if I'm talking to a white person, I know if I'm talking to a Hispanic. So what does that mean, we're not colorblind?
Let me answer that, then give it to Ginger, and she could take it on into the dream and the history. So this nice, sweet little Caucasian lady came up to me, and she said, I'm colorblind. And without thinking, I said, well, ma'am, you need glasses. Your sight to the blind. And she was so hurt because she thought she had brought a beautiful offering and concept. So we're not colorblind. You just explained it quite well. Okay. Your shirt seems to be kind of blue or purplish and ginger. You have on pink today, and I have
I
on brown.
do. Got my pink,
Right.
my pearls,
So-
and my hair pulled back.
So see there? So we see Steve's shirt color. We see your shirt color. You see mine. But what color is your skin? I can't see. I'm colorblind. Ginger, does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense.
Well, I mean, let me throw this in real quick. I mean, that whole before the Supreme Court, which I've toured before, or at least the outside, there's this woman and she's got a blindfold on and justice is blind. And I think people grab from something like that. We're not even supposed to notice color. We're just supposed to treat, but you're saying, and the concept is, of course, we're supposed to notice color.
Yes, we are supposed to notice color, but our whole book is based on Acts 17:26. From one man, God made all the inhabitants of the earth and chose their appointed time. We are one race. We are different ethnicities, and we are different. God made us beautiful and different. That we are to value that in one another, but we are one race.
Yes.
One human race. And now I'm going to juxtapose a couple of things. In the Why Trump book, I have a list of comparisons between Donald John Trump and Alveda King. And there are so many more similarities than differences. And so I forgot to put at the top, Donald Trump human, Alveda King human. I forgot to say that. So, but what happened here, Ginger had a dream, and she can tell you the prophetic dream about why we wrote We're Not Colorblind. And then we ran into a roadblock dealing with politics in the book.
Well, Steve, really how this started was 3 years ago, October the 28th, 2017, Alveda and I were invited to go to her family's church, Ebenezer Baptist Church, where her father, her grandfather, her uncle all stood behind that pulpit.
Very famous.
Yes, very famous. We were invited to be a part of a panel that night called the Beloved Community Talks on racial reconciliation between how women can help bring and racial reconciliation. And Alveda and I were really the only true conservatives on the panel, and we both had some very vitriolic comments, but more Alveda than I, because people were very upset with her because of her vote and support for Donald Trump. So they took it out on her that night.
Wow.
And it was very difficult. And it was really one of the first times I've ever experienced that in my life personally. So we exchanged numbers that night, even though we had known each other before. We exchanged numbers. I called her the next day to check on her. We were both still wounded from it.
Wow.
Said something's got to happen. And then I was invited back in January to speak at the anniversary of her uncle's, the national holiday. And I was invited to be one of the keynote speakers, which I was so honored. I was so honored. It was such an honor and a privilege. But at that particular time, I felt when I stood up a lot of animosity towards me just because of the color of my skin. And behind me was a huge banner that said Republican National Committee Woman. So I totally had my speech all planned, and the Holy Spirit said, change something. So the Holy Spirit had me say, good morning, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I ask you to not judge me by the color of my skin or the title that I hold, but as your sister in Christ who loves each and every one of you. And
that sounds, unless you're missing it, that sounds very similar to Dr. Martin Luther King.
Right.
Right.
And so something shifted in the atmosphere. I got a standing ovation from most of the crowd, and I said that ovation goes to Jesus. And a few days later, I literally had a dream in the night that Alveda and I wrote a book on racial reconciliation. I called her and I told her, now keep in mind, I have never written a book in my life. Alveda's written at least 30. She didn't say, let me see a journal. Let me see a copy of an essay you wrote in high school. She said, let's do it. And within 6 hours, this is a true story. Within 6 hours, she texted me the title of the book right here and the first 8 chapters, the titles.
Wow. You know, I believe that because of the book that we published for her. She says, I'm going to do this book. And before you know it, the entire manuscript is there. I don't know if she types fast or just doesn't take breaks, but she gets it
Well,
done.
God has given me that amazing gift, and now I've got this thing. I'm learning how to do it. I can speak into my phone, and it'll type my words. So they are
Okay.
really
Oh,
coming
you got
out
to teach
fast
me
now.
how to do
But
that, Alveda.
it's the ready write of scripture. You know, there's a scripture. My pen is the voice of a ready writer. The ready write of scripture, and it's in Psalms 145, I guess it is. And
Right.
but it talks about a ready writer. So
That's
that's just
good.
an ability. And what I do, I say, well, God, what do you want to say? And as soon as and I wait, and if he doesn't speak, I can't write anything. So that's
Let
how
me
that works.
let me ask you this, and you know, if I'm off and on something you want to talk about, just veer it back. But so you're at this place at Ebenezer. Was it at Ebenezer
Ebenezer
Baptist?
Baptist Church.
Ebenezer
Where?
Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, where Martin Luther King Sr. was the pastor, then Martin
Wow.
Luther King Jr., and my daddy, A.D. King. Now,
And was
remember, now these were men who were pro-life, pro-God, pro-Bible. Today, I'm just going to mention this, not to be so super political, but the pastor today is supporting abortion and the LGBTQ plus agenda and all that. So I keep telling people, just don't be confused
wow?
about the
No one.
legacy of the
Okay.
King family in Ebenezer Baptist Church and what's
Okay.
going on now. Because I
Oh,
still
okay.
go there for special events and things, but I'm a member of a non-denominational church now.
Right.
So
Now
that is the church. That
I
is the
know,
church. Yeah.
I know people are going to ask this. I know people are going to wonder about this because I did. Alveda, you have a big family. I don't know how big, but you've got a. There's, I think it's Junior that is carrying the torch,
For
especially
his
is it
side
the
of the
son?
family, what is you got Bernice King, who's a preacher, Martin, who's a civil rights activist, and Dexter, who's a businessman. Yolanda passed away. That's the 4 children of Martin and Coretta King, Uncle Emil and Aunt Coretta.
And how popular are you with that with the rest of the family?
It's the oddest thing. We're doing a project together, a physical fitness and health project. Bernice and my cousin Angela and I and my daughters and a friend of hers. We do things together all the time. We
Did
can go to movies together. We have I don't take the turkey off the Thanksgiving turkey and beat anybody with it. We get along, but we totally polar opposites.
you are? Do you have to keep your Trump thoughts to yourself when you're in a family gathering?
I finally decided to because it just gets so heated. And
Okay.
I'm a person, God wants everybody to be saved. We need to love each other. And really, really fast, the 6 steps of reconciliation, nonviolent conflict reconciliation. I told them last year, they were right here in my house. I said, next year I'm going to be on steroids for Donald Trump. You already know that. I don't mean to have any arguments. So let's do the 6 steps. So here are the 6 steps. Martin Luther King worked on that. My daddy, Fred Shuttlesworth, the King Center kind of does all the main classes and things in it. But the 6 steps to nonviolent conflict reconciliation: gather your facts. That's the first thing. Real facts, not fake news and stuff. Honest to goodness facts. Educate your community and your public. Examine yourself, your own soul. Why am I doing this? Is my heart right? Am I trying to just make a point, or do I really want to get along with people? And then you try to go to the table. If it doesn't work at the table, all of this is not violent, then you do non-violent protests and prayers and all of that, and then you come back together. So that's the way I do with my family. And we
That's good.
honestly listen to each other. We just don't agree with each other in politics, not yet.
Is the family by and large pro-life, or is that mainly you?
My granddaddy believed totally in pro-life. My mom wanted to abort me in 1950. And he said, no, they called it a DNC. It wasn't a back alley thing, a DNC. And oh, well, she needs to finish college and all of this, and she's only engaged and they're not married. He said, that's an abortion. We're not doing that. I saw that baby in a dream 3 years ago. She's a little girl with bright skin, bright red hair. And then through the years, I became a rabid pro-choice feminist and all this. And I was going to abort a baby in the 1970s. My granddaddy said, no, that's an abortion. It was legal by then. He said,
Right.
we don't do that. My daddy
Wow.
was pro-life. My mother is pro-life, Naomi. Martin Luther King Jr. said the Negro cannot win if he's willing to sacrifice the futures of his children for immediate personal
Oh.
comfort and safety. When you value the human personality, you won't kill anybody. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I would say I was raised in a pro-life family. Martin Luther King Jr., abortion was illegal when he was killed anyway. And then, you know, my dad was killed the next year. But he could not have supported abandoning the civil rights of a child in the womb in favor of a mother. And so you kill an innocent baby and take away those human rights. It just wouldn't work. He'd be looking for other ways to support that mother without killing the baby.
And you just mentioned that. I'll say that not only was Martin Luther King assassinated, but essentially his brother, your father, was as well.
Yes,
But
the next
but he
year
wasn't as famous.
He was in a swimming pool, no water in his lungs. And then they wrote accidental drowning on the death certificate. And he had bruises on his neck, his upper torso, and all of that. So, yeah.
Wow. So we honor your father in the same way we honor Dr. Martin Luther King. I mean, they paid the same price for the same views. So, we honor that. Well, let's talk about for a few moments, how soon did you know that Donald Trump was God's choice? And I may ask you the same thing, Ginger, but we'll start with Alveda. When did you first know?
It was amazing. And in chapter 2, I think it's called Hello. My chapter 1 talks about me calling him a bull in a china shop during the first debate. And so I'm sitting there watching candidate Trump. I said, he's like a bull in a china shop. And so what I did was to text you, you remember? And you say, Alveda, is that C, little c, or capital CHINA? That's exactly what you answered back. And so then God spoke to my spirit. I said, God just says, yes, and bulls are beautiful, magnificent creatures, and China is fragile. Do you remember getting that text from me?
Yeah, I do.
So right then, it was just amazing. Now, I had always admired President Trump before that as a businessman and all of that for many, many years. So when I was watching that debate, I said, he's really punching in that hard. And he did. So right then because Kim Clement came to one of your meetings, and I can't remember at which time, but he had already prophesied about.
Yeah, he was talking about Donald, and he knew he could hear a man asking, is it for me? Am I supposed to do this? Was several years before he announced.
Before he even announced, yeah.
And he said, your name is Donald, and you're asking if this is for me. He never said his last name at that time. He said,
and
your
we
name
didn't
is Donald.
get it. But I saw him at your meeting, that second meeting, and because Kim actually came in then, and I was like, wow, this is so all the way back there before President Trump was elected. I knew there was something that God was doing. I never asked God all the way through the whole campaign, is he going to win? I just said, God, your will, your will, your will. But God had me come out and say, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. He had me come out and say, I have voted for Donald Trump. I was on the Trump Diversity Coalition before the election.
Wow.
So, and I went to bed though that night on the election. I went to bed about 12 o'clock. I was staying up all night. I said, God, it's your will, be done. And I went to sleep. Next morning I woke up, he was president.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Ginger, what's your experience and when did you know?
It took me a little longer. I actually, Rick and Anita Perry are dear friends of mine. And so he was my first choice. And I was actually his state chair for Georgia, but he got out really early. Then I was for Marco Rubio. But then once that ended, I totally had a shift and I was all in 100% Trump, Trump. I mean, God had to really take me. I mean, it was a very difficult learning experience of how I viewed something and how God views something. And it was an eye opener for me. And God's really taught me a lot.
Do you feel like, Ginger, that it was harder for women back then to make that choice? for Trump?
Yeah, definitely.
Was it more difficult?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking is because that was what our experience. Doreen and I, my wife, and I we've been married 42 years, and we've had this one agreement. Whoever we vote for, we're going to decide together and vote together so we don't cancel each other's vote out. I guess you can cancel each other out, so it doesn't matter if you voted or not. But we've always had that, and it's always been an easy thing. And when I saw Donald Trump come down that escalator, and I heard his speech, and I might have heard one more, and it was one of those things. Maybe it was a guy thing. I knew that I knew that I knew that's who I was going for. And Doreen was saying, "Oh, he's talking," and I said, "I'll make you a deal, Doreen. This is the only time in our marriage we've done it." I said, "I'll make you a deal. I'm releasing you from the contract that we vote for the same one. I totally release you. I just know that that's who I want to vote for."
Wow.
And it was a short. So she said, "Okay." And a short time after that, she was on board with me. It wasn't very long. But it was so clear to me.
It was difficult, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's
but
interesting that you say that, because I'm a Southern girl. I believe in being kind and polite to everybody and everything. So it was really hard for me with some of the language and some of the things that he would say about other people. I just didn't like that. But honestly, now I like it. That's one of the things I like about him.
It's fun. But he's so honest. Now, this is the book, Why Trump? And
tell me more then about that. Tell me more things that you want to say about that book. Sorry.
I really do. And it's got Father Frank Pavone wrote the foreword, for example. And I talk about how we met. I talk about all the things that he's done for America, not just African Americans, but for Americans. I didn't put in here, one of the first things he did for women was women in science, and opened up all of those grants and things so that young girls in school and then women in science, female scientists and doctors were having a real hard time. And he did that. And then his position on pro-life. He's the most pro-life president America has ever known.
So
and
true.
What he's done for race. You know how I knew he was not a racist? When he said, "We all bleed the same" at his inauguration speech. I said, wow, he gets that. We are human beings. We're not separate races. Acts 17:26. We are one human race. We can learn to live together as brothers and sisters because we are one human race. And then when he looked at the situation and the inequities in the criminal justice system, where in 1994, Joe Biden and all of them had done legislation. It was supposed to be tough on crime, but the plan was to stack the jails and fill up the private contracts with the jails. So they locked up all these African-American men. And so President Trump said, that's wrong. And then when he came back with the economy, he says, let's bring all the jobs back. And we're talking about bringing people from overseas. And he's never been opposed to immigration, by the way. He says, but these are the jobs that belong to Americans. Let's bring the jobs back to Americans, which he did. So, and it just goes on and on and on. So I write about that. And then I have some personal pictures of us. Like when I met him the first time we met, I don't know if you can see it, but it says hello.
There it is. I can see it. Yeah.
So the first time we met, and then I'll just show you one more because I really do want people to get the book. But when we were on Air Force One together, after he signed made the Martin Luther King holiday, John Lewis was one of the main authors of the bill, but President Trump signed into law to make the Martin Luther King Memorial and Historic Site a national park. So and then he put my daddy's house in Birmingham on the African American Civil Rights Network. So there are just so many things that I could say.
Lots of things.
Wrote a thank you note to him and all that. So yeah.
Well, and let me just, you just said it, but I'm going to ask you to say even a little bit more for those who are African American, because I get some. I wouldn't call it hate mail, but there was a woman who wrote me. And she said, I have the utmost respect for the prophetic office. I believe in the prophets. I believe in what they say. I know a bunch of your prophets are saying Trump is the man. And then she went on, she says, and then she went on to describe all of the natural things that we look at. He says this, he talks like this, he's mean like this, and he's a racist. And what would you say as an African American to someone like that?
President Trump totally is not a racist. Now, interestingly enough, prior to him becoming President Trump, he was friends with Oprah Winfrey, Jesse Jackson, and all of them. Al Sharpton, helping them to get offices on Wall Street, all this kind of thing. They thought he was just the most phenomenal person ever. Only when he ran for president as a Republican.
As a Republican.
Saying he was a racist. So I always said, okay, well, if any of you benefited from anything he did before now, send him his money back. Why don't you just give him all those checks back? Well, he should have done that. Well, he didn't have to do all the things that he certainly did not have to do everything here. Here, Steve, on the back of the book with my granddaddy, and a lot of people don't know this, how did so many blacks become Democrats? Because African Americans before 1960 were primarily Republicans, right?
How did they?
Yeah, my grandfather, listen to this. My grandfather, Martin Luther King Sr., is on the back of the book. He was a Republican, Negro, or African American pastor in the Deep South. And he was just Abraham Lincoln all the way, all of this. His son, Martin Luther King Jr., was incarcerated. This was 1960. It was a very dangerous situation, and they wanted to get Uncle ML out of jail. So they went to Nixon first. And Nixon said, well, yeah, we probably need to do something. Nixon's team, his people say, no, don't touch that. That's too controversial. Then they went to John Kennedy, who was running for president at the same time. And Kennedy says, no, that's too controversial. We don't want to do it. His brother, Bobby Kennedy said, let's do something. So Bobby Kennedy was, and John Kennedy were primarily responsible for getting Martin Luther King Jr. out of jail. And my granddaddy said, what did he say? Kennedy can be my president, Catholic or whatever he is. I've got all my votes and I've got a suitcase and I'm going to take them up there and dump them in his lap. Wow. So here is granddaddy's African-American or Negro, he was called at the time, Baptist, and all of this, and a Republican. So he did what was expedient at the time. Many Democrats came out and went into, many Republican blacks became Democrat blacks, right? So all these years later, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I was a Democrat. I was elected as a Democrat to the Georgia State House.
Now, how do you explain or describe, as a Caucasian man, everyone that I know believes that because abortion is allowed more in the Democratic Party and an African American now has choice over his body, that's why they're Democrats.
Well, and what I was getting ready to say, I was a Democrat. And then I became a Republican because I realized school choice was necessary because our kids were dying in failing schools. And I said that taking the 10 Commandments and putting you in jail if you say the 10 Commandments in the public square. So I was a Democrat at the time. I became a Republican. I said it's wrong to kill little babies. That's wrong because even though I had abortions as a Democrat a long time ago, I got born again in '83 and my worldview and my biblical view changed. Now, my goddaughter, Angela Stanton King, who's running for Congress in Atlanta, Georgia, right now, 5th District, she puts it this way. She said, why are you going to support killing our babies? Isn't there something better we can do to better ourselves than killing our babies? So when we support folks and vote for people who vote for abortion up through 9 months, and then now they say if the baby's born and you meant to abort it, don't help it, just let it die. No. How in the world can we keep going for that? And that there are less African Americans now, population control through abortion and a lot of the other things that go on, try to keep low numbers of blacks here in America. And then we go vote for the people who create all that. And right now that is the Democrat Party. Wow.
Well, thank you so much for that, Alveda. That explains a lot to me and a lot of those watching. Let's segue for a minute, Ginger, in our last, we just don't have too much longer, but Ginger, talk about what you're seeing. Talk about even things like yesterday at the rally and what you're seeing about Trump. And I don't want to say it for you, but you were talking about he's got a new sort of attitude in the last few days. Can we do that?
Yes, I said that I have been. Well, first of all, I was with him last Friday in Macon, Georgia, at a rally with thousands, and the media here said 1,000 people. Multiply that by 20. I mean, it was like 20,000. And there's a spring in his step. I believe, and he said it on a call the other day that's been publicized. So I'm not telling anything that's not out there. With some supporters, he said, we're going to win this thing. And I can see it. I was watching the rally before this wonderful interview, and he has a spring in his step, a smile on his face, and there's a confidence. There's a wind at his back. And the debate the other night, I just think he knocked it out of the ballpark. Yesterday, I did a rally in South Georgia, Pelham, Georgia, which is a teeny weeny town. You can't even know how teeny it is.
Really?
Oh my goodness. It was pouring down rain. Pour. It was in this open, there was an old agricultural big building, but the sides were still open. So wind and rain were pouring in. There were 500 to 600 people there. And our chairman, David Schaefer, tweeted out the funniest thing. He said, there was a picture of me on the stage with 600 people in the audience and pouring down rain. He said, more people came to see our committee woman, Ginger Howard, in Pelham, Georgia, than came to see Kamala Harris in Atlanta.
Yes. That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? So
it is amazing.
Laughed about that. So, and then Don Jr. this week and last week, I was MC on Friday for an event for Don Jr. And then I was a speaker with him in Savannah, Georgia, at the Gun Club the week before. And they decided it 48 hours before to have this in Savannah. And they could not believe how many people showed up. And Savannah is a liberal town, but you would not believe how many people came. So I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the excitement on the ground. I'm just really excited.
That's amazing. That's such good news. And off camera, you and I were talking, and then I was watching him this morning, and I thought, President Trump is in rare form. He's in such a good mood. He's joking. He's just hilarious.
Dancing. I was talking about him dancing to the YMCA.
Yeah, oh Lord.
And that transfers, and people get that, and they're coming alive. And that this week's going to be really fun to watch. So, well, listen. As we're wrapping up here, Alveda, would you recap the books and tell people how they can get the books from you?
We're gonna hold up both books.
White Trump and We Are Not Colorblind.
We're not colorblind. And I'm telling people, you see those colors, those look like Christmas colors to me, especially on We're Not Colorblind. So they're great stocking stuffers and things too. So why Trump answering me just said, why in the world would you support him? Because he's the God's man. Mm-hmm. He's doing a good job. And I want you to know some of the things he's done. Why colorblind? Why not colorblind?
Because awesome. Right now, with everything that's going on in our country, and this is all about the Bible. I mean, every chapter at the end, there's reflection, there is prayer, there is action. We want you to, I love what Bishop Jackson said. He said in the beginning, I wrote this down. He said, I want you to read, reflect, and act on it. So that is why, and you can get both of our books on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble.
That's good.
Autographed copies are available at notcolorblindbook.com and whytrumpbook.com.
Okay, that's good. Bishop Jackson, yeah, you said he's a friend of mine.
Harry Jackson. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's Bishop Harry Jackson out of BC.
That's what I said, Bishop Jackson.
Yeah. We're on the same council together, the ACPE. They call it's a long name, Apostolic Council of Prophetic Elders, which just means prophets get together. It's a long name.
He's wonderful. He wrote the most amazing forward for our book. I'm rereading it this is the second time I'm rereading it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this book is good. Not because Alveda and I wrote it, because God wrote it through us.
He's got a lot of wisdom, and I'll just say this. Years ago, my brother Warren, who's helping produce this program behind the scenes, did the video, and we had him we got a hotel room before we had a studio, and we interviewed him. This has to be almost like 15, 16 years ago.
Wow.
And I was saying to him, and maybe you can address this because it was a brand new concept to me. I thinking I was saying something nice and good. It was kind of like, I'm not colorblind, or I'm colorblind. I said to him, I don't think we should have all these. It just seems like it's not good that you have black churches and white churches. And he corrected me on camera, and he said, no, that's perfectly fine. I can't remember his exact words, but do you agree with that?
That's ethnicity. And ethnicity is so important. We
See, we thought it was
celebrate
bad.
ethnicity, and so it's okay. In heaven, none of that's gonna matter. We're just gonna all be brothers and sisters. But there are certain ethnic customs and things that people enjoy and do together. So that's okay. But it can't be like before Billy Graham and Martin Luther King Jr. came together in the 1950s and spoke together at Madison Square Garden in New York. Wow. Church services had to be segregated.
Yeah.
And if blacks and whites were at the same place, all the whites sat on one side, all the blacks on the other side, but rarely did they go together to church together. And that's why Martin Luther King said the most segregated hour in America is at 11 o'clock on Sundays in church services. So you don't want that kind of segregation in a church, but it's absolutely okay to have ethnically appropriate
diverse
church settings. Yeah, because sometimes, like at the Latino church, man, it's so lively and so colorful and all of that. And then the African Americans, certain now, some don't, but then some jumping up and down, hallelujah, and wearing beautiful hats. And then in the Caucasian experience, everyone comes in sometimes.
They're frozen chosen.
And then just frozen chosen. But all of that, it's all okay if you're worshiping God and you don't think you're a separate race and you cannot ethnically blend.
Yeah, it's kind of like we need to learn to worship together, and it's also okay to worship in our own cultural thing.
That's okay.
Yes.
It's not a sin. But if that's all you do, and you say my race is better than your race, then that's racism.
Well, that helped me a lot when he told me that, and I knew wisdom was coming from his mouth, but it was a brand new concept. Here I thought I was going to be almost heroic to say we shouldn't, and he corrected me. So, he's corrected me twice. He corrected me about 2 years ago. But not correcting is a strong word. I don't mean it like that, but he came up to me in a hotel. We were at the ACPE together, and he thanked me for all the things that the Elijah list did and some of the things I said. But he says, be sure you tell people, because we take donations as well in our ministry, and he said, be sure to tell people to tithe to their local church. He said it in his own way, and I thought, well, that's right. That's that was correct. But I had the greatest respect and honor for him because people don't know how he has paid the price to walk in those.
He really, and listen, he'll tell you too. I would go around to these settings, and they were very dignified, and the top prophets and everybody, and they'd be saying, and the races need to unite. And I jump right up, right in the middle of their sentence, right in the middle of their prophecy. No, we're not colorblind. There's only one race, one blood, Acts 17:26. And I would interrupt talks, and so they stopped inviting me for a while. And so, but now we're getting it. We're understanding it. We're getting it.
Yeah. Well, we're on a learning curve, and I've seen several polls. A lot more African Americans are voting for Trump, probably for a Republican, than they voted for in decades.
In a long time.
So it's going to be fun to watch, but that doesn't mean the work is done. We have lots of work to do.
We have 9 days, lots of prayer, and lots of voting. I mean, lots of voting for every.
There's a prayer. It's I don't know what time this is going to air or whatever, but
this is live. This is live.
So 5 o'clock tonight Eastern Standard Time. There's a really prayer for the president. I think you can go to his Facebook, Donald J. Trump or something like that. Yeah,
Donald J. Trump at 5 o'clock. There'll be a live prayer time today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, ladies, thank you, Ginger. Thank you, Alveda, you're such a blessing to me, both of you. I hope you both stay in touch. I really do.
Of course we will. Of course we will.
Ginger, hold the book up one more time.
And I think your Elijah list.
Bye, Trump.
Bye, everybody.
White
We're
Trump, and we're not
We're not
colorblind.
colorblind. All right. Bye,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you, everybody. We'll see you all again.
God
Thank you
bless.
again, and we'll see you all again next time. God bless
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.